At 1:32.
Okay. Beth, could you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Austin,
Here.
DiDonato,
Here.
Fielder,
Here.
Dombrowski,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Kim,
Here.
Rosenthal is absent. Also present, Rebecca Malinowski, Beth Stoneburner. She's here.
And we're recording, so that's good. Any additions to the agenda? Nope. Public comment. I don't see any public here, but someone lurking behind anybody in their offices.
Welcome Monica Dombrowski to the committee. She's a new addition since she started over at Winnetka.
Yeah. I feel like I know Monica from way back in the days. I forget. I feel like
It's
you've been
true.
part of this for a while now.
I know Mick and I are like traveling on these parallel tracks, it seems like. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Monica. Welcome.
And
this is
actually my first committee meeting. So
Jeannie, I feel like you're old hat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
it's okay.
Andy, I didn't realize you were on this committee.
Yeah, I kind of snuck in at the 11th hour. I was like, hey, I need a committee.
I feel like I ran one of your meetings last year.
You did.
So I'm gonna have you run the next meeting, and that'll make it even.
Well, I will jot that down, Nick.
It's quite a burden. Okay, can I, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the March 5th, 2020 meeting?
Yes.
I move approval of the minutes as presented.
Now
second.
that.
Any discussion?
Was the second Andy? I just wanted to confirm that.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'll do roll. Austin,
Yes.
DiDonato,
Yes.
Fielder,
Abstain.
over that. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
So the motion is approved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 1 abstain, 1 absent. Okay, the next item on the budget is reviewing the fiscal year 2021 budget projections. Rebecca, do you want to take lead, or Beth, how you want to address this?
Yes, please. So for this first meeting, I just wanted to give everyone a sense of where we're at. We're almost halfway through the fiscal year. And with everything going on with COVID and all of the changes, I wanted to do a pretty thorough review of the budget and kind of see how we're trending. So income is kind of as we expected it to be. We are well over on individual library charges from what we had projected, and that's just from migration expenses from our 2 new members. We anticipate being right on track for ILS maintenance. We might come in a little bit under in that area because they changed a feature that they had been billing for, they're no longer billing for. But because we split, because of our billing cycle, we do 10 months of this year, 2 months of the next year. So I think it'll be a pretty minimal difference. So it's not really noted here. Personnel, we're kind of where we expect we would be. We do have, you'll notice we're not like half of our personnel budget. We have funds in this year's budget for that centralized cataloging position that we're still hoping to bring on before the end of the year. So we probably won't spend out the whole personnel budget because we're going to be a little bit later on that position than we thought, but again, we'll be pretty close. Where we see significant difference is when we get down to sort of our operating costs. Because we're not in the office, we're not using supplies at the same rate, even though we are helping out staff who are working from home with like paper or toner as needed. But then our professional development budget, I'm sure like all of yours, all of our conferences were canceled and all of our travel is indefinitely forever postponed. So we are seeing, the team has found a lot of great online opportunities. I'll actually be doing the Ripple virtual conference Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they're clearly less expensive than it would have been to travel and how all of that. So we will see some savings there. But then, you know, when we look at our regular sort of contractual costs of, you know, the office cleaning and payroll processing, you know, the same for all of you. That's not changing, even though we're not really in the office. We still want to stay. We have a lot of bugs. Still want to stay on top of the cleaning there. So that's, you know, relatively on par with what we would expect. Capital has been tricky for the past couple of years. I'm not sure if you have experienced this, but we're not able to find the hardware we need due to supply issues due to COVID right now. So back in last fiscal year, between March and June, excuse me, we were supposed to purchase 2 new firewalls, one for the office and one for the data center. And we haven't been able to complete that purchase yet because as soon as things come in, they're out of stock again. So we're on some different wait lists. So we're having the same issue now, trying to replace some failing hard drives. So a number of purchases have been postponed, and then some planned maintenance that we were going to be doing, Marcin has recommended putting off because things are still in good working order. And as we prepare for the office move, our needs may change as our space needs change. So rather than investing in new equipment, if we can just extend a warranty or something, we're going to try that for a little bit, but still making sure everything's running and we're not going to be like, you know, down for days because we have an old server somewhere. Utilities costs are a little bit lower. Apparently one of our furnaces isn't working, so they've been extra low for the past couple of months, but that's working on that with the building. There's no change to our rent, which is one of our other major expenses. The same with electronic resources, OCLC. On the detail sheets, you'd see that electronic resources is a little higher than anticipated, and that's because I did a bad job estimating the cost for the new libraries. I had some numbers and they were just totally incorrect. So we're a little over in that budget line, where we will be when we pay the bill that we just got. So I will do a better job of that next time around. But overall, we are trending under our anticipated spend. And we hadn't budgeted a transfer to development this year because we're working on spending down that development fund balance. But because of, you know, these changes and, you know, the addition of our new libraries, there is going to be excess this year that we would traditionally transfer to development. I have here, per our fiscal accountability policy, we want our operating fund balance to have a reserve in it of between 25 and 50% of the previous year's expenditures. So I have the 2019 actual expenditures here. So 25% of that would be about $475,000. So leaving that amount in our operating fund balance, we would have about $127,000 to transfer to development. Any questions on this? I stuck with the summary, but I'm happy to answer specific questions if anything on the tabs had jumped out to you during your review. I'll pop into development. So we ended up last year with a higher balance in development than we had planned for. You can see in 1920, we had planned that we'd start the year with about 650,000 in development, and it was closer to 900,000, again, due to being under budget in various areas and to having incoming libraries. So we haven't made a ton of progress on spending down the development fund is what that boils down to. So looking at our final balance that we had budgeted for this year in development, we had budgeted that with the rebate, we'd be at about $590,000 in development at the end of the year, but it's going to be closer to $700,000 at the end of the year. So there's that. We are planning some significant spend this year. We're working on, actually today is the deadline for proposals for a new CCS website that will take all of our properties and bring them together. So we are planning on paying for that largely out of development. So we had budgeted $25,000 for that. We'll see how these proposals come in. Several vendors have declined to bid due to our small budget, and I was like, I'm not giving you more money. Sorry. So we'll have some more information on that in the coming weeks. We are still planning to do a development rebate and the rail support grant rebate this year. But I think as the year goes on, we'll want to talk a little bit more about how we want to handle that in the coming years. We're not quite to that stage yet, but we do have some plans for spending development funds in the coming years that will help with this balance. But again, we're still at a very healthy / excess balance here. So we'll want to continue to deal with that as this committee deems appropriate and recommends to governing board.
Thanks, Rebecca. I really appreciate the projections for this year. Did Monica or Jeannie, since this might be one of the first times you were looking at in depth, do you have any questions?
I don't. I'm absorbing.
Okay. We'll have time to meet. Rebecca and I were emailing back and forth about the capital. We, at my last library, were facing this before COVID when the China tariffs and all that stuff was, and trade wars were happening. We couldn't get computers. So I don't, I don't think there's any need, in my mind, we'll talk about what next year's budget looks like, but I don't think there's any need to knock down the capital next year, even though it's not going to be spent this year. So that's a relatively small line because you're gonna have a lot more to replace next year if supply chains start to catch up.
Right.
Otherwise, it looks good to me. Are we ready to move on to the discussion of the development fund?
Sure.
All right, let's go to the development fund. So you started talking about that already, Rebecca.
Yeah, so I apologize for sending the wrong list. I had the right list all along, but I just needed Beth to point it out to me. So the updated list is available on my screen. This is what we came up with last year. We've had the development fund. So part of our fiscal accountability policy, which came about in about 2016, states that we need to have an annually updated list of potential development fund uses. So the things on this list are not necessarily things, like putting something on this list doesn't mean the committee is approving it and that I can just spend that money whenever I want. This is just to kind of justify us carrying a balance. I just want to be clear about that it's not, this is money that we're definitely spending. So every year we'll want to update it. Last year we added cost estimates to these various lines. And then I was just working today on updating some of those. So this is not cute. So a big change is we had previously said, Innovative's working on some next gen stuff. We don't know how much it's going to cost, but maybe we'll want it. So we popped it in the line. Well, Executive Committee has since approved that CCS join the Innovative Development Partner Program, which is currently working on the release of Vega Discover, which is a replacement for PowerPack. So there is no cost for CCS to be in the program, but there is a commitment that once the software is in general availability in a way that meets our needs, which is what our needs are is negotiable. But right now it's only general availability for standalone Sierra customers. So we'll be working with them over the next year to develop features that are appropriate for consortium use. And then once that product reaches that stage, we are currently committed to go live with it and use it as a replacement for PowerPack, at which time we would incur additional costs. That contract is cancelable. If the program doesn't go well and we're just not interested, we can back out before we go live with it. But But we do have a negotiated price starting at, and it sounds really expensive, $77,000 for year one, and then there's an increase after that. It would be a 3-year contract. So at this time, we would be able to pay for all 3 years of that contract out of development. And that would give us time to kind of work it into our CCS budget so our members wouldn't see such an impact when it comes to that budget line in the ILS maintenance component.
Rebecca, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you make your spreadsheet bigger?
I bet I can.
There is no level of bifocals that is helping me here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm zooming in with
Big
Zoom
screen,
software
so-
on my screen. That's why I keep looking up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry, is that better for everyone?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, the innovative Vega Discover component, again, for the total of the 3 years would be like $236,000. So again, we could pay that all out of development. So I do want to plan for that when we're looking at our development fund balance. Another component that governing board will actually be talking about at our January meeting, we just decided this at this morning's long range planning committee, is whether or not CCS should pursue a system-wide app. And in our development fund list, we noted that maybe we would want, like, there isn't maybe an app out there that would work for consortia, so maybe we want to develop something. Well, Innovative has since partnered with Solus, and they are now offering a consortium-friendly app where we could have one setup fee and one bill, but all of our members would get their own kind of customized interface that we could all use together. I'm waiting for an updated quote on that from Carrie, our Innovative rep. So the question to governing board would be, do we all want to do this together? About half of our libraries already have an app. And the question is, are they happy with their apps? Do they feel like they're, paying a reasonable amount? Would they be willing to switch if that meant they would see cost savings? So we'll have that discussion at governing board, and then this component may change the price here, or may change and governing board might say, we all just want to do our own thing. And then one nice thing about the Solus app is that if we don't want to do it system-wide, individual members could still work with Innovative and of course CCS to use that app. So this is something that could come to fruition very soon or just be struck from the list completely. I've also removed the cost of this pilot project for centralized cataloging because we have already built that into our operation fund. So I just took it out of the development fund list. So looking at all of those options, we have plenty of opportunity to add, take away, change, etc. Before we reapprove this list and send it to governing board. But we'd be looking, if we did everything on the list, we'd be looking at spending approximately $550,000, which is a pretty significant chunk of, here we go, of our our anticipated $700,000 balance at the end of the year. So, and that $700,000 balance includes those rebates that we've already planned. So that's not something we need to stop this year.
So the Innovative Vega over 3 years, do we have to pay all 3 of those years up front, or so we'd be depleting the fund over a period of 3 years and presumably maybe contributing to it over that time as well?
Correct.
Okay.
How viable is the single sign-on at this point? Like, I think this, it was on the list last year. I don't know that any work's gone to it. I don't know if anybody's really seriously working on it. Again, it's CCS, so you guys might be seeing the world differently and seeing what people are actually doing, but I'm just curious if that's actually viable. I wish it was.
Yeah, so it's viable in that the product exists, like the Open Athens tool. It is a nice tool. Where I'm really stuck is how much utility there actually is for your average public library user. So what I would like to do before completely writing it off or spending more staff time on it is, when it is appropriate to do so, / we figure out how to do it remotely, we set up some patron testing. So the Open Athens tool is nice because if you're going into like 6 library databases in a day, you only have to log in once and it keeps your credentials, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't work with all tools. Like it doesn't work with Canopy. It doesn't work with PowerPack. So how much benefit is there to public library patrons? How many public library patrons are like database hopping all day? I think probably not that many, even in this sort of more remote world that we're working in. So I do want to I feel like I'm making a lot of assumptions. So I do want to do some testing with patrons to see, how much of a sticking point that is. So that's something we'd be working on with Kathleen over the next year.
Thank you.
And I noticed that number is now 150 and previously it was 115.
The previous one was 115 plus setup. So I just
Okay.
added a potential setup fee.
By any chance, does the Vega project do any sort of a single sign-on or carry the credentials over from one site to the next?
No, not that I'm aware of. There are like layers to it. Like right now they're working on discovery, but there is also going to be like a patron engagement component and some other things, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think that anything was specific to that sort of authentication support.
Okay.
I'll make a note.
More idle curiosity than anything else.
I think it's an interesting question. I can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they did it. I mean, but they would almost have to build it in from the ground up, which may or may not be important. Yeah, I tend to agree with you about the databases. I mean, I can see Canopy, Hoopla, Overdrive, Access 360, those resources, but I'm not sure too many people are going to be hopping between one database and another. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would, like, if it worked with the discovery layer, like you're logging into PowerPack or Vega or whatever, and then you can find something that's on Canopy and log into Canopy, that's one thing. But if it doesn't work with the discovery layer, then why bother? I feel like.
That's my feeling too. But yeah, that's something we can confirm with some users just to make sure we're really hearing that frontline like response. But that's kind of where I'm at on it. So it's interesting to hear your perspectives as well.
I think a lot of people are already doing a single sign-on, but it's with their phone and their apps.
Mm-hmm.
They're already signed on, so the single sign-on is their phone screen. And so you can go from Hoopla to Canopy to your PowerPack to everything, and everything's saved already. So
Mhm.
like, we don't need to get into the details. I think doing some user testing is a really good idea.
Can I ask about the office space relocation? Like, what are the chances that we think this is going to happen at the end of the lease?
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident that we'll end up moving. We have a lot of space in our current facility that we just can't make good use of. And then we have a lot of sort of ongoing challenges with the building, like the new roof that they promised this summer hasn't been delivered. So every month we have new leaks that we're dealing with.
Okay.
And now one of our heaters doesn't work, which is fine because we're all working from home. So
I've got a building for sale.
Pardon?
I have a building for sale up here, Grand Avenue, just a block or two down. It's 36,000 square feet. I've got it for you. I'll cut you a good deal.
Alex also suggested purchasing property, and that's just like not a thing I'm interested in figuring out how to do. Nor is Beth. Beth, after that meeting, Alex made that, oh no. So I feel relatively sure that we'll move. I mean, it's possible like our current managers will come back with like such a great deal we can't pass it up, but that seems really unlikely to me. So Beth has already started some work. Beth, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've done so far?
Sure. We put together a 3-year project plan, if you will, just to kind of break up the different phases of whether we would move or renegotiate to stay where we are. So we're a year into that. This year we'll focus quite a bit on needs analysis, space needs, wishes, and wants. And interestingly enough, I think our perspective has already changed a little bit. Just the fact that we have been able to function from home for a number of months now. So on the one hand, I'm glad we still have a few years before this lease is up, because I don't think we'd be comfortable to try and make a decision and move during a pandemic or have to renew our lease during a pandemic. I have reached out to a couple of contacts that I have, brokers who would be more than willing to help us assess our space needs and look at space when the time is right. We've also reached out to Lauterbach and Eamon and Rails or Swan, some other offices similar to ours where they've done moves recently, just to get any input from them or contacts that they have. So I feel we're in a good position right now. It's a little early to start looking at space, but maybe by this time next year, and very much looking forward to seeing what else is out there.
Yeah, so this is another spend we don't anticipate coming for, you know, until August-ish of 2023. Probably we'd have some spend before that. But I just want to make sure it's on our radar.
Okay, thanks.
I'm really excited to not be in our building anymore.
It's an odd shaped building.
It's extra sad now going in. I just realized just how sad it is in there.
Like, why is my office 62 degrees? It's fine. So related to the development fund, last year, and unfortunately Lauren's not here today, but Lauren specifically requested that the committee consider writing a development fund policy that addresses like kind of what balance we'd carry in the development fund, what we do if there's an excess balance. We've been kind of year to year determining, okay, we have enough, we have too much, let's do some rebates. So after that meeting, which was a very long time ago now, I had a conversation with our auditor about that to see like what other organizations are doing, how we'd want to add that into our policies. And he was not enthusiastic about the policy in general. He's always willing to support whatever we need to do. I think he's a great guy, and would be happy to read and provide feedback. His concern was that, you know, if we write a policy now where we're looking at this excess and, you know, we've got a board that's been really flexible with us in terms of, you know, what we need to do and building the fund over time. You know, everything's great. We write this policy and then like 5 years from now, you're all gone and we have, I don't know, a horrible board. And we've kind of written ourselves into a corner. So he's certainly open to it, especially depending on like what level of detail or focus the committee wanted to have. But he was just sort of urging caution. And so I'm interested, again, unfortunately, Lauren's not here, but if there are others on the committee who were on board with that plan, which is great, if you had some kind of general thoughts about what you thought that policy should include, I'd like to get some more information on that and then work on drafting something as appropriate.
Rebecca, out of curiosity, did Lauren provide any sort of like expectation for such a policy, like in terms of detail, depth of a policy, or was it something kind of broad and general?
So one thing that she specifically said, which I think makes sense, is that we have like a practice when we're like at the balance that we want to be at, that, you know, we automatically plan to refund any funds that were in excess that year. So like this year, we're like, all right, our budget's good. Our development fund balance is good. So instead of transferring that, whatever I said, amount to development, and then later rebating it, we would just give it right back to libraries, which I don't have a problem with. I just am haven't wrapped my head around how to write that into a policy yet.
Yeah, again, as the newbie, that would be maybe the one question that came to my mind was, you know, at what point do we stop stockpiling money, right? And how do we make that determination? That would be the one thing that, and I don't know, like for the operating fund, is that 25 to 50% balance in a policy, or is that just sort of our, you know, rule of thumb?
That component is in a policy. That's in our fiscal accountability policy. So that's intended as like our special reserve fund. Like if, you know, all the libraries couldn't pay their fees, but we needed to pay our staff. The development fund is intended to be more like, you know, one-off expenses, R&D, kind of like special stuff.
But could it be worked into that policy that, and again, I'm not as familiar with the policies as maybe other people are, but maybe if it was just a line that said, you know, if the development fund becomes more than, I don't know, what's our typical operating expenditures is 2 million. You know, if the development fund becomes as big as the operating budget, then it's time to refund, or, you know, or 50% of the operating, or I don't know.
I can say that this has been an ongoing question for an awful long time. I think one of the reasons that the current policy says something like 25 to 75% or something like that is because we really didn't come to a good consensus on what would be a magic number, because there are projects that come in and go out over time. But I think a little narrower margin would be nice.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the 25 to 50% is our operating reserves in the operating budget. And then the question is, should we also have, and we can talk about narrowing that component, should we also have a policy about like a cap or something on the development fund? I think, so Paul and Sarah, auditor, I think his concern was if we said like, you know, the cost of, or like a specific number, even if we tied it to like 100% of the operating fund expenditures for the previous year, something like that. There might be a time where we actually want that money. So part of the reason we have such a high balance right now is that in 2016, we were planning for the ILS migration, which I think Chris had budgeted like $1 million for. And then we were planning for the office kind of renovation as well, which we had like $500,000 budgeted for. And then thankfully, the migration did not cost $1 million. It was like 700,000, I think. Please don't quote me on that. And the office renovation, we couldn't do the full project. So that was like 1/4 of what we had planned to spend. So there was a time where we had like $1.5 million in that fund, and we wanted it and we needed it. But then like when we didn't use it, we should have taken action sooner to do something with it. So I think I would be in favor of a policy that took into account the development fund uses list, because we're looking at that every year and kind of planning for it, as well as some sort of like contingency fund. And I don't know how much that contingency fund should be, but like if something happened with our vendor and we're just like super unhappy with them and we want to make a quick change, like can we cover some of those costs up front instead of billing the libraries for it? Again, I don't anticipate anything like that happening. There's no vendors to go to. What do you feel about that?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot and other people can talk too, but what if it isn't tied to a number at all, but it simply codifies some of this oversight where it says, okay, the finance committee will review the development fund once a year and will look at a list of potential uses and analyze whether or not to you know, give some of it back based on future needs or something. I wonder if Lauren would be satisfied with that, because I feel like this process seems like it's providing that oversight and keeping us from hoarding that money.
Well, yes, last year when, because Lauren and I were kind of talking about this, not before, but like last year, and Lauren and I were new to the committee, just like Monica and Jeannie are right now, and I think Anthony was new to the committee last year too. We're making this number up, and Rebecca's helping, and we're like, okay, we'll pick 275. I can't remember the number we decided to rebate, 280,000. And so we're like, okay, we're just going to pick this number, but we're just picking this number based off these things. And it'd be nice to have a guiding document. So Jeannie, what your suggestion is, I think is essentially what we're doing now. Though I think I think we could certainly write a policy such as that up and have the governing board review and approve, or executive. I'm not sure who approves what now. And, but it's essentially putting it just right back where we are, right?
Okay.
And I'm not saying that Lauren's right. I actually lean towards more what the auditor is saying, because, I tend to trust other library directors to understand beyond their own needs and CCS needs, and that's why we're part of this consortium. So I'm not worried about it. I'm like, I can look at the numbers and go, well, we say we want 541. If we have 715, maybe we want to keep $100,000 leeway, so that gets us 640. So we could probably do 75,000, something like that. I feel comfortable with that, as a discussion, not just one person making that choice. So we could certainly write a policy, but it'd be very toothless. It'd be just like, do what you're doing. But maybe that would help Rebecca, or in years to come when she has terrible finance committees, not like us.
I have a good finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Rebecca to send me a link to the I call it the long range survey that was done a few months ago, and I'm just looking over it now. And I think the most requested thing to see CCS focus its resource on in the next several years is to increase your value. The first one is improving and deepening. I can't see the rest of it. It cut it off there. Let me see. But one of the other ones, the next highest request was to expand types of services. And I don't know what the breakdown on that would be as far as what people mean by expanded services, but it's just an observation that people were apparently interested in doing something. I just don't know what that is.
So you're saying we want to make sure we leave funding in case something like that appears, an unanticipated expenditure that we'd want to jump on.
That's where a lot of the survey results. I mean, there are, I don't know what the total number is here, but 13 of this group had indicated. I'm sorry, 16 of the group. Sorry, 13 wanted to expand various services that CCS offers. It would be to find out exactly what those are. I mean, I think Rebecca would have to go out back and find that out. I'm not finding them in here. But I know when we've come up with this list of projects to fit into development fund before, they're pretty varied, and that's okay. But I also understand the difficulty in saying, well, do we want to talk about office space or next gen products, or what is it we want to focus on? And that's obviously a workflow and a workload thing for CCS staff too, is where do we have them focus their energy?
Yeah, and I think maybe at our next meeting, we can bring this discussion back. So in January at Governing Board, we will have a draft of the strategic plan that Long Range recommended this morning. So I think after that meeting, we may want to adjust some things on this list. One thing that we wrote in the plan is either developing in-house or working on some sort of data analytics tool. So, a lot of our libraries are using like Collection HQ or Edelweiss or all these different things. And like, should CCS provide some central dashboards that we can look at our data? So, you know, maybe we'd want to hire, hello kitten, maybe we would want to hire like a contractor to help us with some of that development. So, I mean, we don't have to approve, like, we don't have to do anything with this list today. I just wanted to provide it in terms of context of where we're at and with our current budget. At our next meeting, we would have, I think, more direction on what the strategic plan is going to look like for the next 3 years, and can maybe look at how we'd want to adjust this list. And then when we have kind of a new kind of top line number of what we might spend over 3 to 5 years, that could guide the next part of the discussion of, do we have an excess and what do we want to do with it? And then Lauren will be back too, so we can talk about the policy situation that we're in.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, not to leave everybody hanging, but yes, I think that sounds like a good idea too, is to use the strategic plan.
imagine that, using a strategic
That's what
plan.
we do,
I
right?
know, right? Somebody actually uses those things.
I just thought they were for gathering dust.
Right, exactly. I know. Our board asked me when we had our last long range plan created. They were like, "Well, are you going to use this?" And I'm like, "We're already into it. We're using it. Don't worry."
Okay, let's go to the next bullet point 8. Next steps
Yes.
for
So
21, 28 too.
this is also not a cute document. So at today's meeting, I wanted to go over our overall projections, and then what if any concerns we had for the coming year, which was largely around capital, but it sounds like that's a pretty minimal concern based on the emails I had with Nick or Mick, sorry, not Nick. So in January, we'll have governing board, and Mick could provide an update kind of on where we're at on the budget so far for this year and what our plan is for the budget moving forward. After governing board, so either late January or early February, this group would have another meeting where we'd have a first draft of next year's budget and work on this development fund list. And then in March, we'd have theoretically a final meeting to review the final draft of the budget, go over member fees, and send a recommendation to governing board. Governing board would meet in April, and then hopefully the budget is approved in April so we can start using it in July. This is the first year we're on sort of this new governing board 4 times a year schedule. So previously the budget would have been approved in March. So this is all shifted a little. I think this year in particular, it works out really well because of the timing with the strategic plan development and hopeful approval. Do you have concerns or questions or suggestions on this?
Thank you for making it bigger.
Yeah, sorry. Probably the same thing applies here.
I think timeline makes sense to me. I'm sure the board would be happy to approve the budget in April instead of March. This gives us an extra month, like you said, to work on it, though I'm not 100% sure we're going to need that extra month. The sooner we can get people their member fees for next year, the better, in my opinion. Like for the people who are May 1st budget cycles, if we can, at least get them their preliminary, what we believe their membership fees are, even before the April vote, that allows them to work it into their budget to be approved by their boards.
I got my annual email from Evanston where they're like, hey, do you have our membership fees for next year yet? I'm like, no, sorry, Evanston. Here's some potential numbers you can put in.
I believe we talked about the executive, but I can't remember. Is Warren Newport holding off decision to join till 2022 or?
Yeah, so they did submit an application. They were the first to use our application, and I, despite having multiple reviewers, did not have all of the data points I needed on that application. So I have a couple requests out to Ryan to resubmit some data so we can finalize his quote, but they are thinking 2022. I think
So-
we'd have a decision before then, but that's when they'd want to be working on the project.
So would that influence the budget at all? If it'd be fiscal year 2021, 22, or are we thinking fiscal year 22, 23?
I don't have that level of detail yet. I'm not sure at what point in the year 2022 they were looking at, but it wouldn't impact. It wouldn't impact the budget yet because they wouldn't be live. So
All right,
like, what year am I in? I don't even know.
almost 21.
Yeah, that seems incorrect. But I believe you.
Any other comments on the budget schedule? Does this make sense to you, Monica? The timeline?
Yes.
Jeannie, makes sense to you too? All right, well, let's talk about our next meeting then. Number 9.
9. So we'd be good with a late January, early February. Does anyone have like a major vacation conflict or anything we should be aware of?
What's vacation? I don't even know what that thing is anymore.
Right.
So if it's okay with everyone, Beth will check in with Mick on his availability and then send a doodle poll, and we'll get that done before the end of the year, just so it's in everyone's calendars. Would you like to set the March meeting now also just to have it, or do you want to wait?
I prefer to set both. I am supposed to be going away for spring break. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I'm supposed to be. I was supposed to go last year too. But so I'd like to get both set if possible.
Sure. And we'll check with you on your dates or a potential window if you have it yet.
Thank you.
Late January is ALA midwinter. It's going to be virtual, but I'll be in ALA council the first half of that week. So
We'll check that schedule. Thanks, Jeannie.
Give them hell, Jeannie.
it's my last opportunity.
All right, then we will get that out. If anyone else thinks of any other conflicts, feel free to email me or Beth, but we'll put that together and get those on our calendar. And then Beth and I will get cooking on next year's budget.
Right.
Exciting. It's my favorite season.
It's so much fun. I do it myself too. Do I have to, can I declare this meeting adjourned or do we have to vote? Okay, I declare this meeting adjourned at, what time is it? At 2:20.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy holidays all.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed. All right. Okay, let me out.